Maya Chen woke to the soft hum of her aquarium filters and the pale orange glow of sunrise bleeding through salt-crusted windows. Her studio apartment, all 600 square feet of it, occupied the third floor of a converted cannery building in the old Marina district, where the air always tasted faintly of brine and the gulls started screaming at 5 a.m. She lay still for a moment, watching dust motes drift through the early light, listening to the gentle bubble of her coral propagation tanks. Her neural implant pulsed once against her temple, the subtle vibration that meant incoming messages. She blinked twice to activate the display, and her vision filled with notification overlays. 47 unread messages, most flagged by her ancient spam filter as probable solicitation. Her implant was 3 generations old, basic tier, the kind that could barely handle augmented reality overlays without glitching. She dismissed the notifications with a thought and rolled out of bed. The apartment was cramped but organized with the precision of someone who'd learned to maximize every inch. Equipment racks lined one wall, spectrophotometers, microscopes, water quality sensors, all of it second-hand but meticulously maintained. Her rescued seahorses drifted in their specialized tank, their prehensile tails curling around artificial kelp. She'd named the largest one Professor Plankton. And she fed him first, sprinkling dried mysis shrimp while he bobbed in what she liked to think was appreciation. Her phone rang, actual audio, not neural interface. Only Marcus still called her that way. She picked up the battered device, its screen cracked in one corner. "Please tell me you're coming this weekend," her brother said without preamble. His voice carried that particular blend of exhaustion and determination she recognized from their childhood. "I need backup. Victoria's hosting at the lake house, and you know what that means." Maya moved to her kitchenette, such as it was, a hot plate, a mini fridge, a coffee maker that was older than her PhD, public humiliation disguised as family bonding? Exactly. But Lily keeps asking for her Aunt Maya. She wants to show you her swimming. She's been practicing all month. Maya felt the familiar tug in her chest, the one that made her say yes to things she knew would hurt. 8-year-old Lily was the one bright spot in these family gatherings, the one person who looked at Maya's work with genuine wonder instead of thinly veiled pity. "What time?" "Saturday, 2 p.m. "And Maya?" "Thank you. I know they make it hard, they're family," Maya said, which wasn't quite an answer but was all she could manage before her coffee finished brewing. After Marcus hung up, she stood at her window watching the working marina come to life below. Fishing boats chugged out toward open water, their hulls patched and repainted a dozen times. No sleek pleasure craft here, no holographic displays or auto-navigation systems. Just people doing work that mattered, work that fed communities, work that didn't require a personal brand score or a verified profile. Her neural implant pulsed again. She glanced at the notification. Her personal brand score had dropped another 2 points. She was down to a 2.3 out of 10, firmly in socially irrelevant territory. The algorithm had probably dinged her for not posting content in 3 weeks, for living in an unrated neighborhood, for driving a car instead of using autonomous rideshare. She dismissed the notification and drank her coffee black. The drive up to Lake Serenity took 90 minutes in her 2010 Honda Civic, a vehicle so ancient it still required manual steering. The hydrogen conversion kit she'd installed herself kept it running, but it wheezed on hills and the paint had faded to a color best described as uncertain gray. She'd rolled past the 203,000-mile mark last month. The car's dashboard held no holographic displays, no AI assistant, no connectivity to the neural grid. Just analog gauges and a radio that picked up exactly 4 stations. As she climbed into the hills, the landscape transformed. Older neighborhoods gave way to planned communities, then to estates, then to properties that required biometric clearance at private gates. The automated checkpoints scanned her retinas, verified her family connection, and let her pass with what felt like electronic reluctance. Her neural implant flickered with augmented reality overlays as she entered the wealthy district, property values floating above each house, celebrity resident tags, live social media feeds from verified influencers. She blinked the overlays away. They gave her headaches. Victoria's mansion materialized around a curve like something from an architecture magazine, all clean lines and smart glass that shifted opacity based on sun position. The driveway was packed with vehicles that probably cost more than Maya made in 5 years, sleek autonomous Teslas. Vintage collectors' cars maintained by AI systems, even a flying vehicle perched on a charging pad like a mechanical dragonfly. Maya wedged her Honda between a midnight blue Maserati and a Mercedes that was actively rearranging its polymer skin to a different shade of silver. She'd packed her one nice dress in a garment bag, a simple blue sundress she'd found at a vintage shop for $8. It had real cotton fabric, back when cotton was expensive and retro chic. She grabbed the bag and her small overnight case and walked toward the house, feeling the familiar knot forming in her stomach. The front door recognized her biometrics and chimed. Victoria appeared within seconds. Her smile wide and practiced, the kind of expression that probably looked perfect in photos. Her cousin had the effortless polish of someone whose personal brand score hovered around 8.7, someone whose neural implant was top tier, whose designer outfit shifted colors subtly to complement her mood and the lighting. Her jewelry was smart tech, the diamond tennis bracelet monitoring her vitals, the earrings recording everything for her social media feed. Maya. You made it. Victoria's hug was perfectly calibrated, warm enough to seem genuine, brief enough to avoid actual intimacy. Her eyes flicked over Maya's outfit, cargo pants and a faded university t-shirt, with barely concealed assessment. Oh, is that vintage? She gestured at the garment bag. It's called affordable. Well, you always did have a unique perspective on fashion. Very authentic. Victoria's neural implant flickered. She was probably already posting about the family gathering to her 340,000 followers. Come in, come in. Everyone's dying to see you. The interior of the house was a showcase of everything Maya's life wasn't. The floors were imported Italian marble that stayed cool in summer and warm in winter through embedded climate control. The walls displayed rotating digital art, actual NFTs worth more than Maya's entire apartment building. The furniture was all smart tech, adjusting to whoever sat on it. The lighting responding to mood and conversation. A massive smart glass wall overlooked the private lake, currently showing an augmented reality overlay of property lines and local points of interest. Aunt Linda held court in the great room, surrounded by other family members Maya vaguely recognized. Her mother's older sister had aged into the role of family matriarch with gusto, her silver hair styled in a way that probably required a personal AI stylist, her outfit clearly custom printed that morning. Her neural implant was latest generation, the kind that could handle full sensory immersion and real-time language translation. She was gesturing broadly, describing something, probably her recent trip to the French Riviera. Or maybe the Mars colony viewing she'd attended. Darling. Aunt Linda's air kiss landed somewhere near Maya's cheek. You look comfortable. Still doing that little ocean thing? Marine biology research, yes, such a passion project. Aunt Linda's smile was indulgent, the way you'd smile at a child who insisted they'd be an astronaut. Victoria was just telling me about her latest promotion, VP of Strategic Innovation at Nexus Corporation, 6 figures in bonuses alone. She paused meaningfully. But passion is important too, I suppose. Not everyone needs financial success to feel fulfilled. Maya's neural implant flickered with an incoming message from Marcus. Hang in there. Outside in 10. She smiled tightly and nodded, letting Aunt Linda's words roll over her like water. She'd learned years ago that engaging only invited more judgment. The house tour was unavoidable. Victoria insisted on showing off the renovations, the molecular gastronomy kitchen where food was 3D printed to exact nutritional specifications, the immersive entertainment room with full neural interface capability, the climate-controlled wine cellar that held bottles worth more than Maya's car. Every surface gleamed. Every system was automated. Every object screamed its cost in silent, tasteful elegance. Maya escaped outside the moment she could, heading for the private dock where she knew Lily would be. The lake itself was beautiful in an engineered way, the water treated and filtered, the shore carefully landscaped, the dock constructed from sustainable materials that would last a century without maintenance. A few water drones skimmed the surface, probably monitoring pH levels and cleaning debris. Lily was exactly where Maya expected, crouched at the edge of the dock, peering into the water. She looked up at Maya's footsteps and her whole face lit up. "Aunt Maya." She launched herself into a hug with the unself-conscious enthusiasm of 8 years old. "You came. Did you bring your microscope? Can we look at the lake water? Dad says there might be Daphnia. I brought the portable one. Want to collect some samples?" They spent 20 minutes absorbed in the small universes contained in each water droplet, Lily exclaiming over rotifers and algae while Maya explained the ecosystem with the patience she never quite managed with adults. This was why she came to these gatherings, for moments like this, when science was wonder instead of a questionable career choice. "Ugh, can you move? You're in my photo backdrop." Maya looked up to find Charlotte, Victoria's 16-year-old daughter, stalking toward them with 2 friends in tow. All 3 girls had the glossy, curated look of influencers in training, their outfits coordinated, their neural implants flashing with constant social media updates. Charlotte's personal brand score was probably already higher than Maya's, built on carefully staged lifestyle content and her mother's connections. "We were here first," Lily said, her voice small but determined. "I don't care. This furniture costs more than your mom's car." Charlotte gestured dismissively at the expensive outdoor seating. "Move." Maya started to stand, to defuse the situation, but Lily hadn't moved fast enough. Charlotte's hand shot out and shoved hard. Lily stumbled backward, her arms pinwheeling, and then she was falling, her small body hitting the water with a splash that seemed impossibly loud. Time did that thing it did in emergencies, stretched and compressed simultaneously. Maya registered the depth markers on the dock, the 10-foot measurement, Lily's face disappearing under the surface. She kicked off her sandals and dove without thinking, her body remembering swim training from decades ago, the sundress billowing around her as she knifed into the cold water. The lake was murky despite the filtration systems, full of stirred sediment and algae bloom. Maya kicked down, searching, her lungs already starting to burn. Her hand found small shoulders and she grabbed, pulling Lily up, breaking the surface and swimming them both toward the dock. Lily was coughing and crying but conscious, her hands clutching at Maya's arms. Marcus appeared, having run from somewhere inside. His face white. He hauled Lily up onto the dock and wrapped her in towels that someone had materialized. Maya dragged herself up after, water streaming from her hair and clothes, her dress clinging and heavy. "What happened?" Marcus's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. "She pushed me." Lily sobbed. "I wasn't moving fast enough." Victoria arrived with her phone out, probably already recording for damage control. "Oh my God, Charlotte. What happened?" She was sitting on the cushions. "They're custom imported." Charlotte's voice held more outrage than concern. Victoria's attention flicked to Maya, taking in her dripping form, the ruined dress. "I'm sure it was an accident. Charlotte didn't mean, kids, you know?" She was already turning away, her mind on containment, on managing the narrative. "We should change for dinner. Maya, you can borrow something from my daughter's closet. Though." Her eyes traveled over Maya's wet, clinging dress with something like distaste. Maybe Marcus has a sweatshirt, no apology. No real concern for Lily beyond the social optics. Just immediate pivoting to the next thing, the next carefully managed moment. Maya stood dripping on the expensive deck, watching Victoria usher Charlotte and her friends inside, and felt something cold settle in her chest that had nothing to do with the lake water. Dinner was scheduled for 7. Maya showered in one of the guest bathrooms, a space larger than her entire apartment, with smart mirrors and a shower system that could simulate 20 different water pressure patterns. She dried her hair with a towel because she didn't know how to operate the molecular blow dryer, then pulled on the borrowed clothes Marcus had left outside the door, his oversized university hoodie and a pair of yoga pants. Her blue dress hung over the bathtub, still dripping, probably ruined. $8 down the drain. She looked at herself in the smart mirror, which was trying to be helpful by suggesting makeup applications and hairstyles. Her reflection looked exhausted. Her neural implant pulsed, a message from someone called J. Rothschild, flagged as probable spam. She dismissed it and headed downstairs. The dining room was a study in calculated elegance. The table was real wood, actual oak, probably worth more than Maya's annual salary, set with crystal glasses that refracted light into tiny rainbows. The china was hand-painted, each plate a small work of art. The whole room glowed with soft, flattering light from fixtures that adjusted automatically to skin tones and time of day. Maya took her assigned seat, notable for being neither at the head of the table nor near the important guests, and tried to make herself small. The hoodie was enormous on her, hanging past her hips. Her damp hair was already trying to dry in weird directions. She felt like a drowned rat at a peacock convention. Aunt Linda sat at the head of the table, her position undisputed, her smart dress shifting colors subtly as she held forth. The Mars viewing was extraordinary. Of course, you need the right connections to get on the guest list, but Victoria's position at Nexus helped tremendously. Have you seen the latest terraform projections? They're saying full atmospheric conversion within 50 years. Victoria preened slightly, her neural implant flickering as she no doubt shared the compliment with her followers. The company's been so generous with access. We're actually pioneering some of the life support systems they'll use in the colonies. How wonderful to be part of something so important, one of the family friends said. Maya didn't remember her name. The woman's personal brand score hovered in the sevens: respectable, professional, properly successful. Aunt Linda's attention swiveled to Maya with the precision of a targeting system. Maya, dear, how long have you been with that little nonprofit now? 4 years? 5. Goodness. And what's the salary for that kind of work? The question landed like a grenade disguised as polite interest. Enough. Victoria swirled her wine, something red and expensive, probably algorithm selected to complement the meal. Mom, Maya studies coral. Though I read somewhere that most coral reefs are basically dead already. Seems like a bit of a losing battle, no? She took a delicate sip. I admire your persistence though. Not everyone would stick with something so futile. The word hung in the air. Futile. That's what they thought of her work, of the restoration projects that were actually showing results, of the breakthroughs in symbiotic acceleration that could reverse decades of damage. Futile. What about dating, Maya? Another family friend chimed in. Anyone special? You're not getting any younger. I'm focused on my work. Victoria laughed, a practiced sound full of false sympathy. That's code for no, trust me, I speak fluent single woman in her late 20s. Not that there's anything wrong with being alone. Some women just prioritize differently. Career over family. The implication was clear. Maya had made the wrong choice. Aunt Linda leaned forward with the air of someone offering a great favor. Victoria's company has excellent administrative positions, you know. Health insurance, 401k matching, the full neural interface package. Much more stable than grant-dependent work. I could make a call. Maya has a PhD, Marcus said, his jaw clenched tight enough that Maya could see the muscle jumping. She's not looking for admin work, of course not. Victoria's smile never wavered. I just meant something with more security. More future-oriented. The non-profit sector is so unstable, and she's not getting younger. I worry about her. We all do. The subtext wasn't even subtle anymore. They thought she was a failure. They thought her life was a cautionary tale, a warning about what happened when you chose passion over profit, principles over personal brand scores. They looked at her borrowed hoodie and second-hand dress and ancient car and saw someone who'd made every wrong choice. Maya's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. Her neural implant was mercifully silent, no messages, no notifications, no reminders of her plummeting brand score or her irrelevance in the metrics that supposedly mattered. She was about to excuse herself, to claim exhaustion or a headache or any of the socially acceptable lies that would let her escape this room. When headlights swept across the smart glass windows, everyone turned to look. A sleek vehicle was pulling up the drive, something expensive and low-slung, its exterior shifting colors like oil on water. Not on the guest list, then. Victoria's neural implant flickered rapidly as she pulled up the security feed, trying to identify the visitor, who, she started, then her expression changed. Her eyes widened slightly and her hand went to her hair in an automatic primping gesture. Oh my God. He actually came. The car doors opened with a whisper of advanced hydraulics. A man stepped out, and even from a distance, even through the smart glass, Maya could see he moved with the kind of confidence that came from genuine accomplishment rather than inherited wealth. He was tall, dressed in dark slacks and a tailored shirt that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent but didn't announce it. His neural implant was visible as a subtle silver line at his temple, top-tier tech, the kind that cost 6 figures. He grabbed something from the passenger seat, a bottle of wine, expensive looking, and walked toward the house with the easy stride of someone who belonged everywhere. Victoria was already moving, practically sprinting for the door, her dress rippling through color changes as her excitement registered in her neural interface. "Everyone, this is incredible timing. You're going to love this," the front door chimed. Victoria opened it personally, her smile brilliant and calculated. "James. You made it. I'm so glad you got my message." The man, James, apparently, stepped inside and Maya got her first clear look at him. Late 30s maybe, with the kind of face that suggested intelligence and intensity rather than conventional handsomeness. Salt and pepper at his temples, warm dark eyes that swept the room with quick assessment, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Everyone," Victoria was practically vibrating with excitement, "this is Dr. James Rothschild. He runs the Rothschild Foundation for Ocean Conservation. They just pledged $10 million to marine preservation initiatives worldwide." Aunt Linda's neural implant flickered as she no doubt pulled up his profile, checking net worth, social connections, personal brand score. Maya could see the moment the data loaded by the way her aunt's entire demeanor shifted to something warmer, more welcoming. "How wonderful. Please, join us. We were just sitting down to dessert." James's eyes were still scanning the room, moving past Victoria's eager face, past Aunt Linda's calculating smile, past the polished guests in their expensive clothes. His gaze landed on Maya in her oversized hoodie, damp hair still drying in odd directions, borrowed yoga pants, and something in his expression shifted. Recognition flashed across his features, followed by something that looked almost like relief. "Maya?" His voice carried surprise and something else, pleasure, maybe. Warmth. Maya Chen, every head in the room swiveled to stare at her. Maya felt her face flush hot, confusion mixing with mortification. She squinted at him, trying to place the face, the voice, trying to understand why this wealthy philanthropist was saying her name like they knew each other. "I'm sorry," she said carefully. Have we met?" James moved toward her, weaving between guests with single-minded purpose, and now his smile was genuine, lighting up his whole face. "We have. Several times. Though you've apparently been ignoring my emails." He pulled out the chair next to hers and sat down without asking permission, his attention completely focused on her. 53 of them, to be exact. All unanswered. Maya's mind raced. J. Rothschild. The spam folder. The messages she'd been dismissing for months because she'd thought, wait. J. Rothschild from the emails? The foundation? That would be me. I thought you were a scam. Who emails from J. Rothschild at? That's exactly what Nigerian prince scammers do. James threw his head back and laughed, a genuine sound of delight that seemed to fill the room. You blocked me. You actually blocked the Rothschild Foundation as spam. He was still laughing, his eyes crinkling at the corners. That's actually the best thing I've heard all month. The room had gone silent. Victoria's smile had frozen on her face, her neural implant flickering rapidly as she tried to process this development. Aunt Linda looked between James and Maya with an expression that suggested someone had just explained quantum physics using interpretive dance. Baffled and slightly offended, James leaned closer, his voice dropping to something more intimate, and Maya was suddenly aware of how near he was. How his attention felt like a spotlight. I had to track down your brother's assistant and practically beg for this address. She made me prove I was legitimate before she'd tell me where to find you. Marcus's assistant gave you. Maya turned to look at her brother, who was sitting 3 seats down with a grin spreading across his face like sunrise. He was very persistent, Marcus said, not sounding remotely apologetic. Almost restraining order persistent. James didn't look away from Maya. When you want something extraordinary, you don't give up easily. The air between them felt charged, electric with something Maya couldn't quite name. The rest of the room seemed to fade slightly. All those expensive clothes and smart tech and calculated social performances becoming irrelevant background noise. So, Victoria's voice cut in, sharp and falsely bright. James, you know our Maya? From work, James turned slightly in his chair, angling his body toward Maya in a way that somehow excluded everyone else at the table from the conversation. His knee brushed hers under the expensive oak, accidental or deliberate, Maya couldn't tell. The contact sent a jolt through her nervous system that had nothing to do with her ancient neural implant. "You're Maya," he said, and the possessive phrasing made something in Victoria's expression crack slightly. "She's the reason I'm here. She's the reason my foundation restructured its entire approach to marine conservation." Aunt Linda's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "I'm sorry, what?" James addressed the table, but his attention never fully left Maya, like she was a magnetic north his body naturally oriented toward. 3 months ago at the Global Marine Symposium in Singapore, Dr. Chen presented research that fundamentally changed our understanding of coral restoration. Her method, symbiotic acceleration through controlled microbiome introduction, doesn't just prevent reef death. It reverses damage we thought was permanent. Maya felt heat crawling up her neck. She'd presented at Singapore, yes, but she hadn't realized anyone important had been paying attention. The symposium had been small, mostly working scientists rather than the big-name philanthropists who usually dominated marine conservation circles. "That's lovely," Victoria said, her voice bright and hollow as a bell. "But surely, she made me look like an amateur." James's smile was rueful, self-deprecating, completely genuine. "And I have 2 PhDs and 15 years in this field." He turned back to Maya, his voice dropping to something lower, more intimate. The smart lighting in the room seemed to dim slightly, responding to the shift in his tone. "You destroyed my presentation on sustainable fishing practices. Professionally humiliated me in front of 300 people. I've been halfway in love with you ever since." The silence that followed had weight to it, like the air pressure had suddenly changed. Maya heard someone's wine glass connect with the table too hard. Someone else's neural implant flickered rapidly, probably pulling up her profile, trying to reconcile this information with the woman in the borrowed hoodie. "I didn't destroy it," Maya managed, acutely aware that everyone was staring at her. "I offered a collaborative alternative. Your approach was addressing symptoms while ignoring the fundamental ecosystem collapse. I just thought if we combined methodologies, you told me, and I quote, Dr. Rothschild's approach addresses symptoms while ignoring the fundamental ecosystem collapse." James's eyes crinkled with amusement. "Then you apologized by offering to work together. You bought me coffee afterward and spent 45 minutes explaining why I was wrong about everything, and then you asked if I wanted to collaborate anyway. It was the most devastating and attractive thing anyone's ever said to me." Marcus made a sound that might have been a cough or might have been suppressed laughter. "That sounds exactly like Maya." James leaned closer, close enough that Maya could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive, cedar and salt air. His voice dropped low enough that the rest of the table had to strain to hear. "I've been trying to take you to dinner for 3 months. To discuss funding, to discuss your research, to discuss." He paused, his gaze holding hers with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe properly. "To discuss the fact that I can't stop thinking about you. You came to a family dinner to ask me out?" Maya's voice came out breathless, slightly strangled. "I came to a family dinner because you're impossible to pin down and I'm running out of patience." His smile turned slightly wicked. "Also, Marcus's assistant mentioned there was an incident with a lake, and I wanted to make sure you were okay." The genuine concern in his voice did something to Maya's chest, made something tight and anxious loosen fractionally. He'd come because he was worried about her. He'd tracked her down through her brother's assistant because she'd been blocking his emails for 3 months and he wanted to make sure she was okay. Aunt Linda cleared her throat with the force of someone reclaiming control of a situation. "This is all very sweet, but James, surely you're not here solely for a social call. You mentioned funding?" James didn't look away from Maya. His knee was definitely pressed against hers now, warm through the borrowed yoga pants. "Yes, my foundation wants to fund Dr. Chen's work. Full-scale implementation. We're proposing $40 million over 5 years, someone dropped a fork. The sound of silver hitting china echoed in the sudden silence like a gunshot. Victoria's face had gone through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, disbelief, something that looked uncomfortably like jealousy. $40 million, initial investment. James's tone was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather rather than a sum that would change Maya's entire life. If her early trial scale as projected, we're looking at perpetual funding. Her own research facility. Her choice of team. Complete intellectual property rights. He turned slightly, addressing Maya directly. I've been trying to tell you this for 3 months, but you kept ghosting me. Maya's mind was spinning, trying to process the number. 40 million. Her entire nonprofit operated on grants that totaled maybe $300,000 a year. 40 million it was incomprehensible. It was the kind of funding that could actually change things, that could scale her work from a few small test sites to global implementation, I thought. Her voice came out small. I didn't know. I thought you were spam. You thought I was Nigerian prince spam? James was grinning now, clearly delighted by the entire situation. Maya, my foundation has been tracking your work since your doctoral thesis. You're not just brilliant, you're revolutionary. The Australian government offered you citizenship and a fully funded marine lab last month. Did you even read that email? Maya felt her face burning. It went to spam too, James laughed. A warm sound that seemed to fill the room. You're a disaster at email and the most impressive person I've ever met. That combination is unfairly attractive. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the imported marble. He raised his wine glass with the expression of someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. While we're sharing news, he said, his voice carrying the satisfied tone of someone about to drop a bomb, Time magazine called last week. Maya's on the shortlist for their 30 Under 30 Environmental Innovators feature. They want to do a cover story. James's entire face lit up. You didn't tell me that. Maya, that's incredible, you promised, Maya said to Marcus. Torn between gratitude and mortification. You promised you wouldn't make a big deal. I promised before I watched Charlotte push my daughter into a lake and your cousin dismiss it like property damage. Marcus's voice had gone cold, his protective brother instincts fully engaged. That promise is void. He turned to address the table, his wine glass still raised. Our unsuccessful Maya has also been offered positions at Stanford, MIT, and the Scripps Institution of Oceanography in the past year. All turned down because she'd rather work on the ground than in an ivory tower. Wait. James turned to look at Maya with something like shock. You turned down Scripps? They offered you the Patel Fellowship? I like my team, Maya said quietly. I like where I am. The work matters more than the prestige. Something in James's expression shifted, became more intense, more focused. His hand found hers under the table, fingers threading through hers with casual intimacy that suggested they'd known each other far longer than they had. Where are you, exactly? His voice had dropped to that low register again, the one that made her skin prickle with awareness. Because I'd very much like to see you there. Preferably on a recurring basis. With food. And wine. And, his gaze flicked briefly to the rest of the table. Significantly less family observation, the chemistry between them was visible now. Tangible enough that Maya could see people shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Victoria's neural implant was flickering rapidly. She was probably posting damage control to her social media feeds, trying to spin this situation into something that didn't make her look foolish. Well, Victoria said with forced brightness, this is all wonderful news. We had no idea Maya was doing so well. She's always so modest, never tells us anything. She lives in a 600-square-foot apartment and drives a 15-year-old car, James said, his voice cooling noticeably as he addressed Victoria, because she donates 40% of her salary to conservation projects worldwide. She's been funding a water purification initiative in the Philippines for 3 years out of her own pocket. Did you know that? Victoria's smile faltered. Oui. Maya never mentioned she wouldn't. James's gaze swept the room, taking in the imported marble and the smart glass walls and the designer clothes and the neural implants that probably cost more than most people made in a year. Because unlike most people, she doesn't measure her worth in square footage or brand names. The silence that followed was uncomfortable, sharp-edged. Aunt Linda's face had gone through several expressions: surprise, calculation, something that might have been shame if Maya was feeling generous. The other guests were studying their dessert plates with sudden fascination, their neural implants dim as they tried to become invisible to the conflict brewing at the table. A server appeared with dessert, something molecular and artistic, foam and edible flowers and gold leaf that probably cost more per plate than Maya spent on groceries in a week. No one touched it. The server retreated quickly, sensing the tension. James shifted his chair closer to Maya's, close enough that his shoulder brushed hers. Under the table, his thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand. "Can we leave?" His voice was quiet, meant only for her. "Please? I came here to offer you $40 million and somehow that feels less important than getting you alone for 5 minutes. Maya's heart was hammering against her ribs. "We can't just leave. It's rude." "Why not? You've been here for hours. You jumped into a lake to save your niece. You sat through dinner in wet clothes while your family patronized you and questioned your life choices." His fingers tightened on hers. "I think you've earned an exit, but, Maya." The way he said her name made something in her stomach flip over. "I flew 4 hours to see you. I tracked you down through your brother's assistant because you wouldn't answer my emails. I've spent 3 months thinking about you, researching with you in mind, building programs around your work. The only thing that would be rude is making me sit here another minute when all I want is to take you somewhere quiet and tell you exactly how extraordinary you are." Their eyes locked. The rest of the room seemed to fade, all those expensive surfaces and carefully curated lives becoming irrelevant background noise. Maya was acutely aware of every point of contact between them, his hand holding hers, his shoulder against hers, his knee pressed to hers under the table. The smart lighting had definitely dimmed, responding to some algorithm that measured intimacy and mood. "You're very direct," she managed. "I'm 35 years old. I know what I want." His voice had gone rough around the edges. "And I've wanted you since Tokyo, 3 years ago, when I watched you explain symbiotic relationships to a group of bored undergraduate students." Within 5 minutes they were leaning forward. Asking questions, actually caring about coral reefs. You made them see the ocean as alive, as worth saving. Then you came to the professional conference and professionally demolished my presentation with perfect grace and better data. And afterward, instead of gloating, you bought me coffee and asked if I wanted to collaborate. He paused, his gaze searching her face. "I've been working up the courage to approach you ever since. 3 years?" Maya's voice came out barely above a whisper. "You're terrifying. Beautiful, brilliant, completely indifferent to money or status. You actually care about the planet more than your career trajectory. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" His thumb was still tracing those maddening circles on her hand. How attractive. Maya felt herself smiling despite the surreal nature of the entire situation. "So you hunted me down at my family reunion? I prefer strategically persistent courtship." James's answering smile was slightly wicked. "Say yes to dinner, Maya. Or I'll fund your project and name a research vessel after you and dedicate the new Marine Center to you. I'm not above bribery, that's deeply unprofessional, Dr. Rothschild, then it's lucky we're off the clock." He leaned closer, close enough that she could feel his breath against her cheek. "And please, call me James. Dr. Rothschild is what you called me before you eviscerated my presentation." "I didn't eviscerate." "You absolutely did. It was intellectual carnage. I had to completely restructure my foundation's approach to marine conservation because you were right about everything." His smile widened. "I've never been more attracted to anyone in my life." Maya laughed despite herself, the sound surprising her. When was the last time she'd laughed at a family gathering? When was the last time she'd felt anything at these events besides inadequacy and exhaustion? "Is this really happening?" she asked quietly, If by this you mean am I really offering you $40 million and asking you out simultaneously in front of your entire judgmental family, then yes. James's expression sobered slightly. Though for the record, I'd be asking you out regardless of the funding. The funding is professional. My interest in you is, decidedly not. Maya became aware that the entire table was watching them with varying expressions of shock, confusion, and, in Victoria's case, barely concealed fury. Her cousin's personal brand score was probably taking a hit from this evening, her careful social calculations thrown into chaos by the arrival of someone who saw value in the family member they'd all written off as a failure. Aunt Linda cleared her throat again, louder this time. Perhaps we should move to the sitting room for coffee, actually, Maya said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. I think James and I should take a walk. Get some air. She looked at him. If you're still interested in that 5 minutes alone? I'm interested in significantly more than 5 minutes. James stood immediately, helping Maya up with a hand on her elbow. But I'll start there. They moved toward the door, James's hand finding the small of Maya's back in a gesture that was protective and possessive and somehow exactly right. Behind them, Maya could hear the immediate eruption of conversation, the shocked whispers, the rapid flickering of neural implants as people pulled up information, shared gossip, tried to make sense of what had just happened. Marcus caught Maya's eye as they passed and gave her a small nod of approval. Lily had appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, probably awakened by the commotion. She waved at Maya with both hands, grinning. The front door closed behind them with a soft click, sealing away the expensive house and the expensive people and all their expensive judgments. The night air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of the lake and pine trees. Overhead, stars were visible despite the light pollution from the smart city infrastructure miles away. The automated property lights had dimmed to preserve night vision, leaving them in soft darkness. James turned to face her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. That was either the best or worst decision I've ever made. I can't quite tell yet. Crashing my family dinner, telling your family exactly what I think of how they treat you. He smiled ruefully. I'm not usually that confrontational. You bring out something protective in me. Maya looked up at him, this man who'd flown 4 hours and tracked her down through her brother's assistant and declared his interest in front of everyone who'd ever made her feel small. Why? She asked quietly. Why me? There are hundreds of marine biologists doing important work. Why go to all this trouble? James's hand slid from her shoulders to cup her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. 3 years ago in Tokyo, I watched you give an impromptu lecture to a group of bored students who'd wandered into the conference space. You made coral symbiosis sound like the most fascinating thing in the world. You made them care. Then you came to my presentation and politely but thoroughly dismantled 15 years of my research. And then, his voice softened. Then you bought me coffee and apologized for embarrassing me and asked if I wanted to collaborate anyway. You saw value in my work even while proving I was wrong. You were kind even while being brilliant. That's professional respect, Maya said, her heart hammering. It started as professional respect. James's thumb traced the line of her jaw. Then I read everything you've ever published. I attended 3 conferences specifically because you were presenting. I've watched videos of your lectures. I know you're left-handed. You drink coffee black with no sugar, you have a rescued seahorse named Professor Plankton, and you volunteer at youth marine education programs on weekends. He paused. I know that's borderline stalking behavior. It's thorough research, Maya said, slightly breathless. I'm a scientist. Thorough research is what we do. His smile turned self-deprecating. But Maya, none of it compares to actually being near you. You're even more brilliant in person. You're funnier than I expected. You're kind in ways that cost you something. And somehow, impossibly, you look good in a hoodie that's 4 sizes too big. Maya laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. This is insane. This whole night is insane. Tell me to stop and I will. James's voice went serious, his eyes searching hers. Tell me I'm reading this wrong, that you're not interested, and I'll step back. I'll keep it strictly professional. But Maya, I've waited 3 years for a chance to know you. 3 months trying to fund your work so I'd have an excuse to be near you. And tonight I crashed your family dinner like a lunatic because I couldn't wait anymore. So if there's any chance, any at all, that you feel even a fraction of what I'm feeling," Maya kissed him. She went up on her toes and closed the distance between them and pressed her mouth to his, and for a moment she felt him go still with surprise. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close, one hand sliding into her still damp hair, the other at the small of her back. The kiss deepened, became something heated and desperate and absolutely electric. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, James rested his forehead against hers. "That's a yes to dinner, then," Maya laughed breathlessly. "That's a yes to dinner, good." His voice was rough. "Because I have several months of conversation to catch up on." "And Maya," he pulled back slightly to look at her seriously. "I'm not going anywhere. Your family might not see your value, but I do. The world does. You're going to change everything." They walked back toward the house hand in hand, their fingers intertwined like they'd been doing this for years rather than minutes. The automated path lighting responded to their movement, creating a soft glow that followed them through the manicured landscape. Maya could see Marcus waiting on the deck, silhouetted against the smart glass wall, and even from a distance she could tell he was grinning. "Enjoy your walk?" Marcus asked as they climbed the steps. He was holding 2 envelopes, and his expression suggested he'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Maya felt heat creeping up her neck. "Marcus, good. Because I have something for you." He held out the first envelope, cream-colored and official-looking. "Remember that property 3 lots down? The one with the private beach access and the old boathouse?" Maya's stomach did a small flip. She'd walked past that property dozens of times during family gatherings, had admired the untouched shoreline and the weathered boathouse that would make a perfect field station. "The one you said was too expensive," I lied. Marcus's grin widened. "I bought it last year. The deed's in your name. Has been for 8 months. Consider it back payment for every humiliating family dinner you've survived." Maya stared at the envelope like it might bite her. "Marcus, that's insane. That property is worth, I know what it's worth. And it's still not enough to make up for watching them treat you like a failure for the past decade." His voice had gone hard around the edges, protective fury bleeding through. "You're staying. You're building your lab here. You're going to do your work where Aunt Linda and Victoria have to see it every single day. Where they have to watch you succeed on your terms. Where Lily can come visit her brilliant aunt whenever she wants." James made an approving sound low in his throat. "I like your brother, I like you." Marcus's gaze sharpened, assessment and warning combined. "You saw what I've always seen in my sister." His voice dropped into protective brother territory, the tone that had once scared off Maya's prom date. "Hurt her, and I'll make sure your foundation only funds research on invasive jellyfish for the next decade. I have connections in marine policy circles. I will make your professional life very difficult, understood?" James's hand tightened on Maya's. "Though for the record, I'm planning the opposite of hurting her." Marcus studied him for a long moment, then seemed satisfied with what he saw. He held out the second envelope. "Oh, and this is from your nonprofit. They're making you director of research. 50% raise, full benefits package, expanded team. They wanted to tell you tomorrow at the board meeting, but I figured tonight was better timing." Maya took the envelope with numb fingers. Director of research. She'd been a senior researcher, one of 5, scraping by on grant money and personal sacrifice. Director meant decision-making authority, meant choosing projects, meant actually being able to implement her vision instead of constantly fighting for scraps of funding and attention. "How did you?" "I'm on their advisory board. Had been for 2 years." Marcus shrugged. "Someone needed to make sure they recognized your value, since you're terrible at self-promotion." The board vote was unanimous. "You brought in more successful projects than anyone else in the organization's history. They'd be idiots to lose you." Maya felt something cracking in her chest, something that had been holding her together through years of family judgment and casual dismissal. Her eyes burned. "You didn't have to do all this. Yes, I did. Marcus pulled her into a hug, careful not to dislodge James's hand from hers. You're my sister. You jump into lakes for my kid. You've spent your whole life making a difference while they've spent theirs making money. Someone needed to have your back. When they pulled apart, Maya could see movement through the smart glass wall. The dinner party had dissolved into uncomfortable clusters. Victoria was on her phone, her neural implant flickering rapidly, damage control in real time. Aunt Linda sat very still, her face unreadable. The other guests were gathering their things, clearly ready to escape the tension, ready to face them again? James asked quietly. Maya didn't care. She'd stopped measuring herself by their standards months ago. That evening, after the excitement had died down and the press had left and her team had finally stopped congratulating her, Maya and James walked down to the dock. Her dock now, attached to her property, where she'd build her field station and continue her work. The lab glowed behind them, warm light spilling across the water. In the distance, she could see Victoria's mansion, dark windows reflecting starlight. No regrets about turning down Stanford? James asked, pulling her close. Maya leaned into him, breathing in salt air and cedar and the future she'd chosen. Not even a little. I have everything I need right here. The work. The location. The family that matters. She looked up at him. You forgot Professor Plankton, obviously the seahorse. Most important thing, James laughed, the sound carrying across the water. I love you, Maya Chen. You're brilliant, modest, world-changing, terrible at email, absolutely perfect self. I love you too, Maya said. Even though you're a stalker who crashed my family dinner, best decision I ever made. They stood there as the stars came out, as the automated lights dimmed to preserve the natural darkness, as the lake lapped softly against the shore. Maya thought about the path that had brought her here, the years of struggle and dismissal, the moment when everything changed. The recognition that came not because she'd compromised her values but because she'd held firm to them. Her family had measured her worth in money and status and found her lacking. The world had measured her worth in impact and innovation and found her invaluable. But in the end, the only measurement that mattered was the one she'd carried all along, the knowledge that her work meant something, changed something, saved something worth saving. Everything else was just details. Good. But I'm still taking you on dates. I've been planning them for 3 months. I have reservations at places. I have ideas for marine biology field trips that are definitely dates disguised as professional collaboration. I'm prepared to woo you extensively, Maya laughed, the sound surprised out of her. Woo me, extensively. James's smile was slightly wicked. I'm very thorough. Ask anyone who's reviewed my research. They drove back down the mountain, leaving the expensive estates behind for more modest neighborhoods, then finally to Maya's part of the city where the buildings were older and the streets less carefully maintained. James pulled up outside her apartment building, the converted cannery with its salt-stained windows and working-class neighbors, and Maya waited for some sign of judgment. Some indication that the gap between their worlds mattered to him. This is me, she said, suddenly self-conscious about the peeling paint and the ancient security system. Can I walk you up? They climbed 3 flights of stairs, the elevator was broken again, and Maya unlocked her door to reveal her tiny studio apartment in all its chaotic, scientific glory. Equipment everywhere, coral tanks bubbling, paper stacked in organized chaos. Professor Plankton drifted in his tank, his tail curling around a piece of artificial kelp. James stood in the doorway, taking it all in with obvious fascination. This is perfect, he said quietly. This is exactly what I imagined. You imagined my apartment? I've thought about you constantly for 3 months, Maya. Of course I imagined where you lived. He stepped inside, moving to examine her coral tanks with professional interest. These are beautiful. What species are you working with? They spent an hour talking about her work, about the coral strains she was propagating, about the microbiome introduction techniques that had revolutionized reef restoration. James asked intelligent questions and offered thoughtful suggestions, and Maya realized this was what attracted her most, not the money or the position or the way he'd defended her to her family, but this. The way he engaged with her work like it mattered, like she mattered. Like her passion was worth his complete attention. I should go, James said finally, reluctantly, checking the time on his neural implant. It's late, and you've had an exhausting night. Thank you, Maya said at the door. For tonight. For everything. For seeing me, Maya. He kissed her softly, a promise of more to come. I see you. I've always seen you. The whole world is going to see you soon. But I'm grateful I saw you first. After he left, Maya stood in her tiny apartment surrounded by her work and felt something shifting in her chest. For years she'd measured herself against her family's standards and found herself wanting. For years she'd thought maybe they were right. Maybe she'd made all the wrong choices, maybe she'd wasted her potential on work that didn't matter, but standing there in her thrift store pajamas in her cramped apartment with her rescued seahorses and her revolutionary research, she finally understood. She hadn't failed. She'd succeeded at something they couldn't measure, couldn't quantify, couldn't understand. She'd changed the world quietly, without recognition or reward, because the work itself was enough. The recognition was just a bonus. 6 months later, Maya stood in her new research facility watching the sun set over the lake. The building had taken 4 months to construct, sleek but sustainable, every system designed to minimize environmental impact while maximizing research capability. Solar panels covered the roof. Rainwater collection fed the extensive aquarium systems. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the water, providing natural light and constant connection to the ecosystem they were studying. Her team had grown from 5 to 20 researchers, all of them brilliant and passionate and slightly underpaid because they'd chosen impact over income. The coral cultivation tanks lined one wall, each containing different restoration experiments. The microscopy lab occupied another section. The molecular analysis wing was state-of-the-art, funded by James's foundation and equipped with technology Maya had only dreamed about 6 months ago. Today was the press conference announcing their expansion to 12 countries. The formal unveiling of the International Restoration Initiative. Maya had changed into real clothes for the occasion, still nothing fancy, just slacks and a button-down shirt she'd bought specifically because it had pockets for sample vials, and done something with her hair that wasn't a ponytail. James had offered to have his personal stylist help, and she'd laughed at the very idea. The press gathered in the main lab space, cameras recording, neural implants flashing as reporters filed real-time updates. Maya caught sight of Marcus and Lily in the back, both grinning. James stood nearby, close enough to offer support but far enough back to make clear this was Maya's moment. Dr. Chen, a reporter asked, "Your restoration project is now being implemented in 12 countries, from Indonesia to the Caribbean. How does it feel to see your work scaling globally?" Maya thought about the question, about all the years of struggle and rejection and careful grant writing. About the family dinners where she'd been dismissed as a failure. About the moment everything changed because someone saw value where her family had seen waste. "It feels like proof," she said carefully, "that success isn't measured in dollars or status. It's measured in impact. In lives changed. In ecosystems saved. I could have taken a corporate job years ago, made more money, had a bigger house. A better personal brand score. But I wouldn't have done this. I wouldn't have changed anything that actually matters." And the Rothschild Foundation's involvement, another reporter pressed. James moved slightly closer, his arm sliding around her waist in a gesture that had become natural over the past 6 months. "Best investment we've ever made," he said, his voice warm. "Professionally," and he looked down at Maya, his expression soft. "Personally, there are rumors of an engagement," the reporter said, clearly fishing. Maya felt her face heat. They'd discussed it, of course. James had made his intentions clear. But she'd wanted to wait, to make sure this was real, to prove to herself that she could succeed on her own before tying her life to someone else's. "We're focused on the work right now," she said diplomatically. "I'm focused on you," James murmured, quiet enough that only she could hear. Always. The press conference continued, questions about methodology and scaling and international cooperation. Maya answered them with the ease of someone who'd spent years defending her research to skeptical grant committees. This was easier. These people actually wanted to hear what she had to say. Afterward, as the reporters filed out and her team celebrated with cheap champagne because old habits died hard, Lily tugged at Maya's sleeve. "Aunt Maya, when are you going to marry James?" "He's here all the time anyway." Maya opened her mouth to give some diplomatic non-answer. To explain that these things took time, but James was already moving. He dropped to one knee with the smooth confidence of someone who'd been planning this moment, pulling a small box from his pocket. The room went completely silent. "Maya Chen," James said, his voice carrying across the lab space, "you've changed my world in every way that matters. You've made me a better scientist, a better person. You've shown me what real success looks like, not in grant money or publications or awards, but in work that actually matters, in passion that transforms understanding, in dedication that changes the world." He opened the box, revealing a ring that was beautiful in its simplicity, a single diamond set in sustainable metal. Elegant without being ostentatious. "Would you marry me?" Maya stared at him, at this man who'd driven 4 hours to crash her family dinner, who'd offered her $40 million and his heart in the same breath, who'd seen value in her when her own family had seen failure. Around them, cameras were probably still recording. Her team was watching. Lily was bouncing on her toes with excitement. "You couldn't have waited until we weren't on camera?" Maya asked, but she was laughing, tears streaming down her face. "I've already waited 3 years, James said. And I want everyone to see what I see, that you're worth everything." "Yes," Maya said, pulling him up, kissing him in front of everyone. "Obviously, yes." The room erupted in applause and cheers. Cameras flashed. Maya could see the live feeds already updating, the story spreading across social media, the narrative being written in real time. Somewhere, probably watching on their smart displays, Aunt Linda and Victoria were seeing this moment. Were understanding, perhaps for the first time, exactly how wrong they'd been. Maya didn't care. She'd stopped measuring herself by their standards months ago. That evening, after the excitement had died down and the press had left and her team had finally stopped congratulating her, Maya and James walked down to the dock. Her dock now, attached to her property, where she'd build her field station and continue her work. The lab glowed behind them, warm light spilling across the water. In the distance, she could see Victoria's mansion, dark windows reflecting starlight. "No regrets about turning down Stanford?" James asked, pulling her close. Maya leaned into him, breathing in salt air and cedar and the future she'd chosen. "Not even a little. I have everything I need right here. The work. The location. The family that matters." She looked up at him. You forgot Professor Plankton, obviously the seahorse." "Most important thing," James laughed, the sound carrying across the water. "I love you, Maya Chen. You're brilliant, modest, world-changing, terrible at email, absolutely perfect self. I love you too," Maya said. "Even though you're a stalker who crashed my family dinner, best decision I ever made." They stood there as the stars came out, as the automated lights dimmed to preserve the natural darkness, as the lake lapped softly against the shore. Maya thought about the path that had brought her here, the years of struggle and dismissal, the moment when everything changed. The recognition that came not because she'd compromised her values but because she'd held firm to them. Her family had measured her worth in money and status and found her lacking. The world had measured her worth in impact and innovation and found her invaluable. But in the end, the only measurement that mattered was the one she'd carried all along, the knowledge that her work meant something, changed something, saved something worth saving. Everything else was just details.